Well, good morning. Welcome to Fridays with Francis. Many years ago, I was introduced to a character. I don't know if I really don't know the best way to describe him. He was a comical character, kind of a skit. Dr. Richard Williams was the first person I saw do this, and Richard came up to me after he did it at a youth event. He said, "You know, you've got the kind of personality you could do this." And I've reflected back on it over the years, and I've wondered exactly what Richard was saying. I chose to take it as a compliment, but the story is the story of a person who was a friend of a worm, and the worm's name was Herman the Worm. And in order to tell the story, you had to stick your tongue in your lip like this and talk like this. And you had to say, "I have a friend, and his name is Herman." And so I've done that over the years, and I have completely destroyed some of the brain cells and some of the fragile youth as they have begun to grow. But even now, I'll have a phone call every now and then from a child that I was the pastor of the family, and she'll want me to come by and say the Herman the Worm for her kids. Well, it's an interesting little story because it's a story of Herman, and he goes through a lot of life situations until he finally learns something about the grace of God and the love of God. Well, one year, long time ago, my wife and I were able to go up to Pawling, New York, and we went to an event that was held and provided by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And Dr. Peale was he was in his, I don't know, early 90s at the time. It was pretty remarkable how Dr. Peale was able, he preached like 4 times in 3 days, and never saw a note. He just was just an excellent preacher. Well, on the last night that we were there was a talent show. And my wife talked to a couple of persons, and the long and the short of the story is, I got talked into doing Herman the Worm at the talent show. And so I began like I always did. "Hello, I have a friend, his name is Herman." And as I started to tell the story, the people really got into it. Now, we're not talking about children here. We're talking about most of whom were Methodist ministers and spouses. And sort of made me go back to thinking about what Richard said about having the personality for this. But anyhow, I told the story, and it was a big hit. Everybody had a great time with it. Well, the next day, after we had worship, and it was time for us to take our rides to the airport, Dr. Peale stood at the door. He and Mrs. Peale stood at the door and shook the hands of every person who was in attendance. And he went one by one and said something personal to each person. I was very impressed, at least until he got to me. He shook my hand and he said, "Herman, I'm so glad to have met you." I shook his hand, and my wife and I walked on out, and on the way to the limo that was taking us to the airport, I said to her, My whole life, I wanted to beat somebody like Dr. Peel. I finally meet him, and he thinks I'm a worm. Well, that's actually scriptural. There are places in the scriptures where, especially in the Psalms, where the psalmist refers to himself as a person who is of low estate. I'm thinking primarily of the psalm that Jesus actually quoted from the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? It comes from the 22nd chapter, 22nd psalm, and listen to these words, how powerful they are. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me and from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry in the daytime, but you do not hear, and in the night season, and am not silent. But you are holy, enthroned in the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in you. They trusted, and you delivered them. They cried to you and were delivered. They trusted in you and were not ashamed. But I am a worm and not a man, a reproach of men, a despised by the people. All those who see me ridicule me. They shoot out their lip. They shake their head, saying, he trusted in the Lord. Let him rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. But you are he who took me out of the womb. You made me trust while on my mother's breasts. I was cast upon you from birth. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. What a powerful psalm. The beauty of the psalm is it starts out as the psalmist is in a desolate place. And he's reminded that in those moments when he feels abandoned and isolated, the very God he thinks has abandoned him is the God who created him, the God who gave him life, the God who brought him into this world and breathed not only the breath of life, but imparted to him God's amazing grace. Well, I'm not sure you ever really want to learn the story of Herman the Worm. And maybe there are those moments when you feel a little bit like the psalmist. I'm so far removed and so rejected that I feel more like a worm than a human. But hear the good news. God's grace is sufficient. Paul had it right. And he has extended his grace to us even in those moments when we didn't know we needed it. We didn't earn it. We didn't do anything to deserve it. God just gave it. And so, may the God who created you, may the God who gave you life, in this Lenten season as we seek to draw close to God, become even closer and more real to you than ever before. Well, that's my story for this Friday. Thank you for being a part of this, and I trust that all is well and that you'll have a great weekend. So until we get back together next week, remember this. Go with God and go in peace. Amen.